You are listening to TechVibe Radio. It's coming at you from the Huntington Bank studios. TechVibe Radio is your front row seat to Pittsburgh's fast-moving technology ecosystem. TechVibe is brought to you by the generous support of Blink at 321blink.com, Chorus Call at choruscall.com, C-Leveled at c-leveled.com, Compunetics at compunetics.com, Huntington Bank at huntington.com, My Benefit Advisor at ptc.mybenefitadvisor.com, and PNC Bank at pnc.com. Here are your hosts, the Pittsburgh Technology Council's Audrey Russo and Jonathan Kirsting. So glad you woke up super early and tuned in to TechVibe Radio. I got plenty of energy today, Audrey, just putting it out there.
I do too. I'm thrilled to have our guest today and to talk about things related to economic development, innovation, the future, and much more. So thrilled to have Lance Lindauer with us.
And he's the Executive Director of the Partnership to Advance Responsible Technology, otherwise known as PART, which is a great acronym. I'm a sucker for a good acronym, that's for sure. And if you go to www.responsibletech.ai, you can definitely get more details there. I like to arm people ahead of time, Lance, so if they want to go in there and learn more about you, they can do it. So welcome to the show. We're so glad you're hanging out with us today because we're going to talk about what PART's up to and a really cool study that you guys just came up with that we're excited to learn more about and for our listeners to learn more about as well too. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I love what you guys do with the programming, and so delighted to talk.
That's definitely. So first off, who is Lance Lindauer at the end of the day, and what exactly do you do as Executive Director of PART?
Yeah. So again, thanks for having me. So I moved to Pittsburgh about 12 years ago, and you were just saying that you really enjoy a good acronym. So my first role out of graduate school was working for the federal government. And so the first day they immediately give you a book of acronyms to memorize, and then some folks speak in just acronym sentences. And so we were quite used to it whenever we were coming up with the name PART. But cool. So I found myself moving to Pittsburgh from West Virginia about 12 years ago in a sort of a dual combination. My wife at the time was in the medical field. And so Pittsburgh being such a hotbed of not just the med side of everything, but life sciences and lots of growing interest in the biosciences space. So we were looking for different cities to move to that had a combination of the med side for her, then the ed side for me. I was going back to graduate school to get a policy degree. And obviously, if anybody knows anything about the University of Pittsburgh's program at GISPIA, it just made perfect sense for us to move to Pittsburgh in a coordinated fashion and take on sort of two new programs and kind of see what the city and this region was all about. And so moved up here about 12 years ago. Had been involved in a variety of different companies and programs while I was in Pittsburgh so far. I like to say that I've dabbled in the public, private, nonprofit, and academic sector. And so I mostly deal with policy and different operations problems across industries. I also say I'm sort of industry agnostic. So I've had experience in the retail sector, manufacturing sector, defense sector, health sector, and just always looking for new challenges and new opportunities and new ways to keep myself busy and to contribute as much as possible. So that's just a little bit about my background. Yeah.
And when did you join PART as Executive Director?
So actually, So PART founded itself. We all founded it about 4 years ago, actually. And I like to tell folks, we actually kind of started as like a coffee club, if you will.
Cool.
So in 2018, actually about 4 years ago from right now, a couple of us came together. I, at the time, was at the RAND Corporation, again, working on like the defense policy side and some operation stuff. But some folks from, academia, some folks from the autonomy space in Pittsburgh, the legal space in Pittsburgh, the philanthropic space in Pittsburgh. We all kind of got together, and like I said, initially it was over coffee, and we all started talking about, okay, from like the policy side, or from the private sector side, or for the philanthropic side, we all know that we live and work in an amazing region, being Southwestern Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh specifically, that is leading the national conversation and sometimes the international conversation in areas like artificial intelligence, in areas like robotics, in areas like additive manufacturing and some components of life sciences. But what we really sort of coalesced around was there wasn't a lot of conversation 4 years ago around this notion of like responsibility and ethics and some of the research and development and the deployment and particularly the governance of these technologies. And so that's no fault of anybody's. It's how certain private companies, chose to operate. That's how certain parts of the world's public sectors might be a little bit more advanced than others, whether they be municipal level, state level, federal level, et cetera. How certain academic institutions govern things. I mean, there's a variety of different factors. And so we all just got together and we're like, it's interesting that we're the world leader in so many tech components. Why can't we be the world leader in this notion of like responsible tech
I love that.
development?
Yeah, I think it's
and so it really, I mean, this conversation was just getting started like 4 years ago. It's come a long way, and you guys have done a lot of that as well with your different audiences, making sure that folks understand the great stuff that's happening here. But I like to say that we're only in like the second inning, and so we still have a long way to go. And like I said, we came together as a coffee club. We saw an opportunity to tap into some of the great work that was being done here, so we formed a nonprofit. Launched formally in 2019, and we've been doing great work ever since.
Love it.
Yeah. So you have a study. You want to talk? We're going to talk about that. I hope we have enough time to get at least some of the cliff notes and then whet people's appetites. So you did a recent study that just got released, and it's long, it's comprehensive. What are give us some of the cliff notes, because and the studies really talk about what the study's focused on, so that our listeners can understand why this is important and why the study.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest thing, the easiest way to start was part sort of came together around not only this notion of responsibility and what does that mean with respect, vis-a-vis to technology, but also about being a collaborative organization and also making sure that we were able to provide objective analysis and really different providing different tools to the regional leadership about what it means to invest either directly or indirectly into the tech economy and in doing so in a responsible nature. And so, yeah, Audrey, to your point, we had been looking at the economy and looking at the region as a whole in a really interesting way in terms of, I like to use the metaphor of cooking. So if somebody were to say, the region has everything that it needs to be a vibrant economy, it has everything that it needs to really produce mass economic development benefits or to really lean into educating its citizens, et cetera. So we have 10 out of 10 ingredients. Our view was, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that, say, the oven is heated to the right temperature or the chef is perfectly trained in the right direction to mix these ingredients, that we have the right ingredients, that we have the right quantity. Yeah, I know, right? And so we like to use this metaphor because what really happened was we were asked as part of some of the interdisciplinary work that we do across the different sectors to look into, if we don't have something in the Pittsburgh region, is there opportunity to partner outside of the region to maybe fill a gap locally? And that had a variety of different threads that we had been working on. And so we had been talking with some local leaders around the area of what would it look like if Pittsburgh were to partner with another city, again, starting in the tech economy here. And what would that look like to be able to fill some of the needs that we might have here? Again, is mostly in AI to start off with, but in some other sectors as well. So as we got involved in this specific study, and I'll give a shout out, generously funded by the R.K. Mellon Foundation, we started to look at a few different things about, what would it look like for regional partnerships? Well, literally a couple of weeks later, I ascended to taking on the executive director role after our original executive director, who you both know well, Kenny Chin, went back to graduate school. And then COVID onset. And so what was really interesting is as we started having these conversations with folks, the tenor of them changed. And it wasn't necessarily because of, well, we have to like seize up conversations, we have to keep the lights on, we have to freeze budgets, et cetera. It became the needs of economies changed in the face of COVID. So what we ended up doing with the study is we expanded the scope and we took a look at, well, if we were to make a move internally and develop something that we don't have locally, or if we were to partner with an outside city or an outside organization to bring in something to a local economy, do we even have our ducks in a row to make that successful? I think we saw that need and that problem arise during the bid for like Amazon's second headquarters. And it's happened several other times too. So we took the approach of, well, let's assess what we have here locally. Let's do a connectivity study. Let's do a density study. Let's see how collaboration is truly faring. And I know on the other side of the break, I'd be really interested to kind of talk about our process of how we went about going about that. But yeah, we tried to assess what's our connectivity and density before we even took that next step. Let's make sure our foundation is strong.
Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. Everyone stay tuned right here. We're coming back with more TechVibe Radio. We are talking to Lance Lindauer, the executive director of PART, and we're going to learn more about the study of how Pittsburgh can build a better innovation economy through connecting density and collaboration. Keep your dial tuned right here. This is Jonathan Kirsting.
And this is Audrey Rousseau.
And we're from the Pittsburgh Technology Council. Be right back. pghtech.org. Learn all about us right there. Indirect technology spend is at an all-time high and continues to grow on the balance sheet year after year. This March 29th through the 31st, PASS, the global leader in technology spend analytics, will host the Accelerating Technology Procurement Summit at Heinz Field to discuss best practices and strategies in procurement of the category. The summit will cover topics like negotiation, relevant data, sourcing, and will feature executive-level keynote speakers from Google, Oracle, KPMG, and many more. So sign up today at www.atp-summit.com/register and use code TechVibe for $500 off each registration ticket. The labor market is increasingly competitive. The best and brightest employees no longer just want top-notch compensation and benefits. Your teams need a continuous people improvement platform that ensures your talent chooses to stay and grow your company. Visit www.work.software to learn more.
For more than a decade, Blink has been producing unique creative services and solutions that tell a story, move hearts, and drive decision-making that advances business objectives, your business objectives. We adopt a company-wide policy of candor, transparency, and a good old-fashioned work ethic in the pursuit of building long-lasting relationships with our clients and our partners. From video and design to strategy and digital marketing, Blink is here to creatively advance your business. Visit us at 321blink.com.
All the cool kids are listening to TechVibe Radio, and so are you. TechVibe Radio is coming at you from the Huntington Bank Studios and is made possible by the generous support of our sponsors, Link, Chorus Call, C-Level, Compunetics, Huntington Bank, My Benefit Advisor, and PNC Bank. Here are your hosts, the Pittsburgh Technology Council's Audrey Rousseau and Jonathan Kirsting. So glad you kept your dial tuned right here to TechVibe Radio. This is Jonathan Kirsting.
And this is Audrey Rousseau.
Audrey, we got a lot of ground to cover. We are hanging out with Lance Lindauer. He's the executive director of the Partnership to Advance Responsible Technology, better known as PART, one of my favorite acronyms. And they have a new study out, Audrey. It is how Pittsburgh can build a better innovation economy through connecting density and collaboration. And we want to know some of the key findings of this study. So we, as a region, can start coming together and start working to make ourselves a better region so we can produce more tech here and have more impact. So thanks for hanging out with us today. We really do appreciate it, Lance.
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me.
So before we launch in, is there a website that people can make a reference to?
There is. Yeah, there is. And so we have responsibletech.ai. And so there's a link to a link to the website under our work is where we have the aforementioned report out there. So free to download, take a look, and you can see some of the other cool sponsors that we work with in and around the region as well out there.
Absolutely. And right there, the link is right to the study. You can start going through. You've got a great executive summary that really encapsulates it. And you even break out some of the early takeaways in there as well, too. So if you want to kind of go through it quickly, you can definitely navigate through it. So tell us, first off, let's go through what were some of the key things that immediately bubbled up, from this study?
Yeah, so one of the big things that we tried to do with this study was the actual research design itself. We wanted to make sure that it was different than some of the other really awesome studies that had taken place over the last 5 years in Pittsburgh that your listeners are definitely privy to, I'm sure. So one of the big things we wanted to do was make sure that we actually got into the field in a really coordinated and targeted fashion. And we covered 200 individuals, over 176 different organizations, broken down into a couple dozen categories of how exactly we would classify maybe a private sector company as startup or growth. or the public sector, whether they're municipal or state level government, and et cetera. And so there it took a year of speaking with folks and analysis. And yeah, we came with some really cool takeaways.
So you want to give us some of the takeaways?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we came up with 5 overarching macro themes, if you will, that we think the region itself, and again, this is extending beyond the city of Pittsburgh. It's really sort of the southwestern Pennsylvania 10-county region that we think could really go a long way into building a more connected, denser, collaborative economy. Because as studies show, the denser an economy is, the more collaborative it is, more money flows in traditionally, and greater ideas sort of spark and flow out as well. So the biggest things that we tended to focus on, the 5 themes were capital, leadership, technology, education and workforce pipeline, regional and national strategy, and metrics and data were the 5 overarching themes. And so across those themes, what we did was we decided to come up with recommendations, and no particular 5 recommendations in each or something. They just sort of fleshed out from the field work that we did. We came up with 33 recommendations across those 5 themes. And our goal was to make sure that we contribute mightily to the local conversation, that these aren't just philosophical changes that need to happen. These are tangible action item recommendations that folks could take on to really, start building momentum and towards making our economy more dense and more connected.
So you want to give us some examples?
Yeah, absolutely. And so within, say, capital itself, one of the big things that we wanted to do was to really diversify the actual avenues of capital that we have. We wanted to think about how to shift the culture of what it means to have capital either flow into our economy or most specifically loosen up in the actual economy itself. And we have to think about, doing a little bit of like post-mortem analysis. Once a company does get some capital, or once it does, maybe exit, who's talking to those folks? How do you talk about, where's that money going to reflow in? How do we build a circular economy? There's several other domestic examples out there in the United States and even in the world where money tends to flow in a circular fashion. And we haven't seen that as much in the Pittsburgh region. So how do we actually spur a little bit of that? And so that's specific to the first theme of capital. And we go through, Audrey, each of those themes, and we provide sort of a step-by-step guide or set of suggestions about how we think some of these conversations could happen. What I will point out is our 4th theme, we talk about a regional and national strategy. I think that that's really informative of everything else within our specific report. Again, you could tie back metrics to a strategy. Again, you could tie back how to get capital into a strategy. But what we did here quite often from the 200 operators that we spoke with was, we all tend to be marching to a little bit of a different beat in the region, and each organization has its own mission and has its own ballywick. But what's the larger strategy? What's the larger language that we should be speaking to, as opposed to let's make the region better? How do we actually tangibly get there? We provide a few recommendations to how to get there. And one thing that I will say is, we've received the question often, well, who should be doing that? Who's most
exactly. So who's going to do that for
probably,
us?
Probably reading your mind a little bit there, Jonathan. So one of the big things we say is, look, our role as an organization, as part, is to be as objective and independent as possibly can be. We didn't assign roles to any of these recommendations. Now, as you can imagine, as we're doing our analysis, and as you can imagine, as we're doing our writing, we definitely have an organization in mind of that organization should be the one to be tackling this.
So at what point do you nudge them and say, hey, we got some ideas for you?
Yeah. And so the beautiful thing is, we didn't choose to put that out in sort of the public fashion, but what PART does is we hold a lot of one-on-one conversations. And so, yeah, to your point, PART is absolutely busy, either directly having these conversations to play a role in it, or more importantly to us, facilitating dialogue between 2 different folks, either intra or inter sector, to get this going.
And that's why I really encourage everybody to go over to, go to responsibletech.ai. There's a big link for the survey and the study, and read through it, because it might spark you to then be like, I'm part of an organization. We want to help us know somebody, because it takes the whole community here for us to get the boat rowing in the right direction. So I'm encouraging people, do your homework, go check this out, study it, get back to us. Tell us what you think.
And the other thing that I would like to just say is that anyone who's listening is that it's not just up to, economic development organizations to just drive the strategy. It is up to each and every one of us who are committed, particularly those who are in business or people who are working in innovation, to be additive to this. It is not meant to be only owned by a certain view.
Right.
So
I'm so glad you said that, Audrey. We tell folks that we're not an economic development organization. We do a lot of work in and around schools. We are not an education nonprofit. We are not a manufacturing nonprofit. We tend to work with everybody because this is an all hands effort. And so I'm really glad that you said that, because we can't just lean on our economic development organizations. Everybody has to help out.
Lance, great job. We're all out of time. Once again, Lance Lindauer, Executive Director of PART. Go to responsible.tech.ai. Check out the study. It is, I think it's imperative for everyone to be looking at this. It's our future at stake here. So Lance, thanks for being part of the show today. Do appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much.
TechVibe Radio is coming at you from the Huntington Bank Studios and is made possible by the generous support of our sponsors, Blink, Chorus Call, C-Leveled, Compunetics, Huntington Bank, My Benefit Advisor, and PNC Bank.